Welcome to the Feminist Spark podcast. This is a podcast run by feminists in Kenya where we discuss feminism with an African lens. In this series, we will be analyzing gender-based violence, its causes, effects, and how we can work to eliminate it from our societies. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation, and feel free to join in by liking, sharing, and leaving a comment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feminist Spark podcast, a podcast where we discuss feminist practice in all its iterations, particularly in the continent of Africa. I'm your host, Njahira Gitahi, and today I'm joined by Ivy Wirimba. Welcome, Ivy.
Thank you so much, Njahira. I'm happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Maybe you can start off by introducing yourself and what you do.
Hi, so my name is Ivy Wirimba, as you had mentioned. A communications and advocacy specialist. The work that I do is around, mainly around mis and disinformation, especially how it affects LGBTQ plus communities. And I also look at how narrative exclusion also plays a role in the way that our stories are told, further into legal and policy spaces, and just from a social cultural perspective, how that narrative exclusion plays a role in making sure that LGBTQ plus people continue to be marginalized.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that expertise will really come into handy in today's conversation because we're going to be addressing gender-based violence, specifically as it affects LGBTQIA plus people. So I guess you can begin by telling us what the current landscape is, as you've seen with your work, what the landscape is with regard to gender-based violence against LGBTQ plus persons and the forms that it takes, before we get into the narrative aspect of it.
Okay. I think gender-based violence is a concern that we all face as Kenyans. Let me use that as a framing perspective, where when you think about gender-based violence, my mind goes to harassment on the streets or as serious as sexual assault. When I am a feminine presenting person and the harm that was caused to me was by a masculine presenting person, it would be easy, quote unquote, easy to walk into a police station and say that this is what happened to me. There is also the case of concern that police also need to be trained a bit on how to deal with such and handle such cases. And there's a sort of like a referral system or a way that they make sure that you get the kind of help that you need. That's in the most stereotypical perspective. But things change when you're an LGBTQ plus person. For context, LGBT means lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgender persons. Queer as well, but then there's a lot more folks within this umbrella. So, say in the case of a masculine presenting lesbian, there's a case that was in pipeline sometime like a few years back where there was a group of people who had been unhappy with this masculine presenting woman who used to just walk around not harming anyone or doing anything about who they are. It's just the perception. And they were attacked on the streets. And so organizations like Galk Plus, Nigel Hack, Ishta came in to assist with such a case because there's a deep understanding that you can't just walk into a police station and expect the kind of help that, however minimal it is, because they can already perceive you as not normal in the sense of the traditional
deviant.
Yes, you're deviant in your representation of self. It already creates this barrier where they're like, then you deserved the harm that was, laid out or happened to you. And so when we talk about gender-based violence, especially for LGBTQ plus communities, there's layers to how you can get help. And even when it comes to this harm happening to you, it becomes that anyone around you then is a cause of harm. It could be your family members. From this, it could be that they kick you out of your home, or they deny you access to education as a way of manipulating you to say that you've changed. It could be that they even go further and start on conversion practices where there's this misconception that you can change your sexual orientation or your gender identity. And so they can take you to church, which is another form of like a space where harm happens to LGBTQ plus people. They'll pray for you. They'll exercise like demons, nombema demons, itoke type situations. Yes. They'll even take you to camps. There are camps that are usually created to get people to change. And then there's also, if you went to report to your chief, again, you can't also get help there because, again, it just piles and piles, because if the people don't see you for being a human being because of the perception that they carry about who you are, becomes difficult for you to get the kind of assistance you would need when something harm or when you're faced by harm.
Yeah. So there's two very interesting things that you're saying there that, I mean, at least are really standing out to me. The first is the question of who gets to be treated as a victim. When you speak about gender-based violence, you're saying that, for instance, with mask-presenting people, it's less likely that your case will be taken seriously because your victimhood is lost under some certain circumstances. Perhaps you can tell us more about that. And yeah, the second thing is also this idea of the fact that we could be talking about femme-presenting bodies, but for queer femme-presenting bodies, well, there are some similarities with the violences that cis-het women face. There are also some differences there. You've spoken about conversion therapy and violence from the church. Maybe you can touch on those two aspects. One, with the narratives about who is a victim, and secondly, with how the violences differ between cis-het women and queer women.
Going back to the first question about mask presenting people, and when I say people, it's with the perception that they're supposed to be femme presenting. So your body says you're a girl, but the way you present yourself looks like a boy or a man. So there's a conversation there on your stepping into a realm that nobody allows you to. Like, how dare you as a girl try to present yourself as a man? And the existing narrative around that is men are to be respected, they're dominant, they are, like aggressors in a way. And so women on the other side are supposed to be this gentle, soft, nurturing people. And so by you entering a realm or expressing yourself in this perspective that people have, it then there's two things that happened. One, nobody gave you permission to do that. And then the second thing is, if something happens to you, then it's your fault. I mean, like, si wewe ni chali, unataka kukua chali sana. So, then kitu kikufanyikia,
you asked for it.
Mwanamume ni kujikaza, basically, those narratives. Like, at the end of the day, this narrative harm everybody involved. Because just to digress a bit, where even when it comes to gender-based violence that happens to men, in my context, thinking about gay men, it then becomes difficult for them to also seek help, because wewe kama mwanamume, these are not things that should be happening to you. And so
It's because you've chosen the wrong path that it's happening.
Exactly. You've chosen a feminine thing. And so then when you even look at it from a wider perspective, it then becomes that the issue that people always have is femininity itself. Femininity is supposed to exist in a certain way. It's supposed to be dominated and subordinate to this big masculine thing. And masculinity is never supposed to be hurt or questioned. And it creates a lot of complexities that harm everybody involved. To the second question, where you were asking about the differences, the nuances between like harm that happens to like cis hetero women and lesbian women,
or just queer
people. I think I need to acknowledge the work that the women's rights movement has done over the years to theorize and to document and to amplify the plight of existing in this world as a woman. That is great work that has happened. But then for reasons that will probably continue just unpacking as we talk, LGBTQ plus folk, and let me put it as LBQ GNC folk, have been left out of these conversations. So again, I can't just walk into a police station and say, for example, if I have a situation where me and my intimate partner, something has happened between us and this person hit me or more serious things happened, I can't even imagine myself walking into a police station and saying that this has happened to me. And that in itself is violent to the person, that whatever happens to me is my own fault and is my own thing to solve. Whereas cis hetero women, for all the work that they have done, they, again, through how they have designed the contexts, and this conversation has left out other diverse identities that also need and require the same kind of push and advocacy that they are working towards.
Yeah.
And so you can't say that you're trying to make any change if you're leaving some people out of the conversation.
Yeah. And also, if you're narrowing the definition of what it means to be a woman, it also, or what it means to, like, only certain types of women are valid and others aren't. Okay, let's speak about the legal framework as well. As we know, in Kenya, the same-sex relations are illegal under the penal code. And also, you see the trickle-down effect of that in other laws. For instance, in the Sexual Offences Act, the way sexual offences are defined are very, I would say, gynocentric. I don't know if that's too aloof of a word. But also there's this great push towards further criminalization and family values and what is right for Africa. We've seen Ghana, Senegal, Uganda, and Kenya. There's this concerted effort to have us be even stricter. How do these things exacerbate the prevalence of violence against queer people? And as well, how does the law act as a barrier from seeking justice or protection?
The existence of, in the Kenyan context, of sections 162 and 165 within the penal code has undermined most of the efforts that LGBTQ plus movements are usually trying to push for. For clarification, 162 and 165, or at least 162, criminalizes sexual acts between people. So it's not just LGBTQ plus people. So that misconception then enters into the narrative, and so it becomes difficult to have conversations without people saying, but this is an illegal thing and we can't exactly do anything. So then it becomes difficult for anything to really happen. I'll talk about it from the context of, let me put it in an example. With the media work that I do, we always have to demystify that the existence of the penal code does not criminalize the person. It criminalizes the act. And that separation is very important, because then that allows for the work to exist, that people can be able, and even through the recent case, this was, I think back in 2023, with the freedom of association ruling, it was a proclamation that there's sexual orientation and gender identity are protected classes now under the Constitution. And so it then means that queer organizations can continue doing the work that they need to do towards ensuring that LGBTQ plus people can enjoy the rights guaranteed for every Kenyan within the Constitution.
So what does that speak to in as far as, yes, the law, there are some loopholes, I would call them, in the law that enable us to organize and associate, but the law still presents a situation where we cannot run to it for justice or for protection?
I wouldn't say that the law doesn't guarantee that you can't go to it to seek retribution, because by the existing precedents of freedom of association, there was the right to access education, where a lesbian student who was kicked out of school was able to sue the school and get compensated for what that had meant for her future. There's also the recent case on blackmailing, where gay men have constantly been targeted by harmful people on dating sites or social media platforms. So there's existing precedents to show that the law is doing what it needs to do, because it understands that all of these people are Kenyan, and so they are protected under the Constitution. I think the narrative then is where it becomes skewed, because the existing narrative just continues to misinform and disinform. Let me not even use misinformation, maybe for like the middle audience, where we're usually just trying to help folks understand what's actually right and what's wrong. But then when it comes to politicians, when it comes to media, when it comes to police officers, when it comes to people within the positions that can actually help and do something about changing what's happening, then it becomes disinformation that is used to target LGBTQ plus people and continue to push for conversations or build on the conversations where you were talking about family values. That kind of creates that scene for these discussions to happen, because when the public is not fully informed on what is wrong and what is right and how far their rights can go, it becomes easy to push for policies and bills and acts that then further just suppress the existence, or at least the fulfillment of the rights of LGBTQ plus people in the country.
Right. Going back to trying to understand how these violences manifest themselves, I'm thinking about, like you've mentioned, masc presenting women, femme presenting gay men, trans women, trans men, who we know face other forms of violence, housing insecurity, like you said, being taken out of education. What other forms of precarity do queer people face that then exacerbate their susceptibility towards gender-based violence?
I like drawing a timeline where we start looking at it from birth. When a baby is born, immediately, like, they decide that this is a girl or this is a boy.
These days they even decide in utero.
Yes.
Science.
And so they have the baby shower and they're like, wow, let's
Gender
celebrate.
reveal.
And as recently as the passing of the intersex, or at least the integration of the intersex conversation within the Children's Act, then also means that a person can also be marked as intersex. So that already creates a scenario. As this person grows, there was a conversation I was having with a trans advocate, and they were telling me that even when you're deciding with your intersex child, like one of the questions they will ask you is unataka aende high school wapi? Because the systems are yet to catch up with what will it mean when this intersex person becomes an adult. And the conversation is also going further into then the person has to declare when they are going to pick up their ID, whether they're male or female. Like the intersex marker probably will disappear. I don't know that. I leave that to like ITGNC advocates to come and share more on. So you go into school. In my case, you're a girl, and in the way that you present yourself, you're headstrong, you're a tomboy, you're doing all of these things. And so everyone is just like, "Aya kasichana." Then as you become a teenager and you're becoming who you are and you discover what that is, you're now standing in line with, you could lose out on your education because you could be expelled, or you could get bullied by the girls, other people in school. It could be when you're walking home, you're already, the perception is already clear and people can do whatever it is that they will. So catcalling, all of those things. And then when it gets to your ID, then if we're talking about trans people, that's already another discussion. So registration as a Kenyan citizen also becomes a problem. If that becomes a barrier, it then means you're locked out of university. It locks you out of a job. If you want to start a business, you can't do that because where's your ID? If you want to open up a bank account, you can't do that. Something as simple as your M-Pesa, you can't be able to do that. If you want to, you've gotten to, let's say, luckily you've crossed all of those lines. Now you want to get married. You can't be able to do that because that is also not recognized. If you want to get children, what do you mean you as a homosexual couple? What do you mean you're coming to us to get our children? You're going to teach them these homosexual things. When it comes to sharing of wealth, where that is a thing that is captured when two people are married. You can't be able to do that with your partner. You can't share your insurance. You can't share a house because, the neighbors will talk and then it will become a thing. If we're thinking about church, where did I leave it? You can't even go to church because now your spiritual, whatever, if for some people, we have to take that. Like, it's important for some people. You can't do that because you were probably kicked out of church all of those years ago. And so you've had to figure that out for yourself. So you don't have that community. You also lack community in your neighborhood because you're already shunned and, those are just outsiders. Going all the way down to death. If something happens to you and now you're dead, or even before that, say you have cancer or something is happening to you and you need to go to hospital, your access to services also becomes a thing because you're a spectacle for people. The nurses are calling each other like, kucha usikie ni nini hao, ule tuko na shoga pale, and then you pass away and because there's a conversation on succession. Say you had children, luckily somehow. What happens? You had a partner for all of these years. What happens to your mali? because again, you're not recognized by the law. Whatever partnership that you had is also not recognized. Your family, your partner are all fighting for you because, again, it's a mess. So at every juncture, existing as a queer or an LGBTQ plus person in this country, you're constantly just trying to balance. You're at every point. Nothing about the community and the society as it is right now tells you that you're wanted or you're okay existing. You have to fight at each step, or you have to fade and blend, which is also valid, because who wants to go through all of that?
It's so tedious.
Which then, to me, then the question on, it's a choice, it's a lifestyle, it's a thing that you watched on TV and now you have become this person. It's like, you think anyone wants to choose this for themselves?
Yeah, why would you choose a constant life of violence and having to hide? As we wrap up, looking forward, what are the main, like, one or two changes structurally or legally or politically that you think we need to start making in order to most urgently deal with the problem of LGBTQ violence against LGBTQ persons of a gender-based nature?
I think legally a lot is being done. So the judiciary deserves its flowers. When it comes to policy legislation work, I think it all goes back to, whenever I think politics, it's people will always say that they're thinking about their constituents, and so if their constituents aren't for a thing, they can't exactly talk about it because it will isolate them from the communities that they need votes from. I think that's just a backward way of just saying that we don't want to help you. And it undermines the fact that queer people also exist within your constituents. Nothing has ever happened when we said we were afraid. So if you're going to demand for better fuel prices, as simple as that, or if you're going to demand for jobs for the youth, or if you're going to demand for better protection for girls in school, or if you're going to demand for whatever it is, whatever platform a politician chooses to pick, there's a nuance where you can layer the fact that it also affects queer people. That's a way to enter. Those are low-laying, like, ways of having these discussions, because by saying that you can't have this conversation, then it also undermines the fact that queer people exist within the space. They're also paying for the taxes that then go and pay for your salaries and whatever it is that you're usually doing in your day-to-day. So for me, it just always boils down, even when I think about, maybe this will take us a bit further back, when I think about the report on femicide that was done by
the technical working group.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went through it, and it, apart from it just not really saying what all those reports and all of those submissions that were made and all the participation conversations that happened, it further just isolated the existence of LGBTQIA people within those spaces, and they had included their data, they had included the urgent matters that they needed to see addressed. And while it seems like, there's this conversation of it's a non-issue right now, we don't exactly want to do anything because we have bigger problems to deal with. Even this is another problem. The fact that queer people exist and they are constantly asking and they're putting in their data, but then there's a concerted effort to just be like, no, we don't see that. We're actually going to leave it from
Completely
the report because we
exclude it.
want them to just talk about
Because we want
femicide.
to be taken seriously.
Well, guess what? They still didn't take you seriously. Like, you still asked the president to address it, and it wasn't addressed. So, like, what harm would it be to have all of that data included in these conversations, apart from just avoiding the conversation? And I don't know until when.
Yeah, until when? That's a good question.
Until when mtajifanya hatuko hapa. We've been here, we've been saying we are here, we've been doing the work, we've been sending in, we have been participating, we've been voting, we've been paying for the taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, until when? I think that's a perfect place to end it, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Ivy, for joining me on this conversation. It was really a great pleasure having you speak, especially from that communications perspective. I think that was rather eye-opening. Thank you so much for watching and for staying tuned with us, and see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.